okay. Besides being too dark, I don't know what's going on with it. It says I have a pause button. Boy, I wish I had that before. See what I'm saying? Things are all different. The lighting has changed and gotten darker. I don't care. I'm not letting anything stop me. I have books to read and a small curriculum to finish before my birthday. So let's get started again. Chapter 6, Part B. When I woke up in the morning, I was more sure than ever that Tom wouldn't get any help from me. I had nothing but terrible nightmares all night, with ghosts chasing me. After we finished our morning chores, Tom went up to his loft to think. This was one time I hoped his great brain had sense enough to tell him to leave ghosts alone. That afternoon we went swimming. Parley, Sammy, Danny, Seth, and Basil went with us. They all looked red-eyed as if they had the same kind of nightmares I had. We talked about the ghost on our way to the swimming hole. Everybody agreed it was a sure enough ghost, except Tom. My great brain won't rest until I find out if it was a real ghost, Tom said. Basil shook his head. If you don't find out last night, you never do. And, I said, your great brain is never going to get any rest as far as I'm concerned. The others nodded in agreement. All I want you to do is go to Silverlode with me again tonight, Tom said. If we see and hear the ghost again, then I'll believe in ghosts. But maybe we all just imagined we saw that and heard a ghost that night. How about it? This time, Tom didn't get any volunteers. Are you cowards or men? Tom demanded. I say anybody who refuses to go is a coward. Tom had us over a barrel. I'll go. Percy was the first to volunteer. The rest of us had to admit we were cowards or meet Tom outside our barn that night. Well, I sure wouldn't have volunteered if I'd known what Tom planned to do that night. I would have cheerfully let every kid in town call me a coward first, but I didn't know until we went up to our room that night. I didn't want to tell the other kids, J.D., Tom said as we waited for the curfew whistle to blow. But tonight, I'm going to capture that ghost, or whatever it is. And you are going to help me. Oh, no, I'm not, I said. The ghost of Silverlode never did me any harm, and I won't as long as he leaves me alone. And won't as long as I leave him alone. Yes, you are, Tom said. Oh, what are you going to do with the ghost if you do capture it? I asked, hoping that would make him change his mind. If it's a real ghost, Tom said, I'll interview it. I'll find out all about ghosts, and Papa's can print it in the story, and Papa can print the story in the Advocate. It'll make him world famous. You wouldn't do anything to prevent Papa from getting world famous and becoming a world famous journalist, would you? Of course not, I answered. And that's why I knew you would help me, Tom said. And if it isn't a real ghost, like my great brain tells me, I'll find out who's been scaring kids and grown-ups by pretending to be a ghost. The curfew whistle finally blew. We met the other kids in front of our barn. Tom went into the barn where I'd locked up my dogs. When he came out, he was carrying Swin's lariat. Sammy pointed at it. Why the lariat? He asked. Well, I'll tell you when we get there, Tom said. Again, we sneaked about without being seen to the town limits, and then walked to the corner of Whiskey Row and Corey Streets. now I'll tell you about the lariat," Tom said. "I'm going to capture that ghost, or whatever it is, tonight. You fellas stay here for 5 minutes. That'll give J.D. and me enough time to sneak up that other trail leading to a mine in the back of the cemetery. I'm going to sneak up behind the ghost, or whatever it is, when he steps in front of the tombstone and lasso him to the tombstone." "Not me," Seth said. "I'm going home right now." "You have nothing to be afraid of," Tom said. "If the ghost is going to be mad at anybody, it'll be J.D. and me for trying to capture him, and not you fellas." "Well, how will we know when it's 5 minutes?" Sammy asked. "All you've got to do is count slowly up to 300, Tom said. "Then go up the trail to where we were last night. Stay there until the ghost appears and stands up in the front of the big tombstone. Then you all can beat it home. That is, unless you want to stay and help me capture the ghost." Tom sure didn't get any volunteers that time. "J.D. and I will leave now, so you could start counting," Tom said. I had no choice but to follow my brother or be branded a coward. I knew Papa would rather see me dead than walking around a coward, and I was sure I was going to drop dead from fright if nothing else that night. Tom ran with me down Whiskey Row to another street, where we turned to the right. We ran softly to the end of that street, and then began to walk carefully and quietly up a trail that led to a mine in back of Boot Hill. Then we crawled on our hands and knees through the cemetery until we came to the big marble tombstone in back of the tombstone of Mr. Tinker's grave. We were only about 30 feet from where we'd seen the ghost the night before. Tom peeked around the tombstone where we were hiding. "There's something fishy about this," he whispered to me. "The ghost, or whatever, is hiding behind the Tinker's whatever it is hiding behind the Tinker's tombstone." My curiosity overcame my fright. I peeked around the headstone. Sure enough, I could see something white crouched behind the tombstone in front of us. Then we heard the footsteps of the kids coming up the trail to Boot Hill. Again, I peeked around the tombstone. I saw them stop where we had all stopped the night before, and then the ghost got up from behind the tombstone and stepped round in front of it with his back toward us, facing the other kids. "Oh!" the ghost cried in that high, shrill voice of his. "It's so cold and dark in that grave." And then he began that terrible cackling laughter that had sent chills over my body. I stared with fascinated horror as Tom got up and walked toward the ghost. He stopped about 15 feet from the ghost and made a loop in the lariat. The kids began to scream with terror and run down the trail. Tom began to whirl the lariat over his head. It made a whining noise, which the ghost couldn't hear because it was cackling laughter and the screaming of the kids. Then Tom made a perfect throw with the lariat. The noose dropped smack over the ghost and the big tombstone. Tom jerked it tight and then began running around the big tombstone and the ghost, making coil after coil of rope, tying the ghost to the tombstone. When the end of the lariat got short, Tom stopped behind the tombstone and tied it with a slip knot to the noose of the lariat. The ghost wasn't cackling that crazy laughter anymore. He was hogtied to that tombstone like a calf at a rodeo. Tom motioned for me to follow him as he ran down the trail toward Corey Street. I sure didn't need any encouragement. I guess the ghost was so surprised he couldn't think of anything to say until then. "Come back and let me go," I heard him shouting. "I won't hurt you." Tom and I didn't stop until we reached Whiskey Row. "I got him tied so he can't get away," he said, puffing. "You go get Papa and Uncle Mark. I'll wait here." Oh, I think you just missed a move. Could have been a secret. Now you're going to get in trouble. looking for fame just a little too much. You should have interrogated the ghost first, before lynching the authorities. Okay. I tried to speak, but I couldn't for a moment. I was so chilled with fright that I felt as if I was in a bathtub full of ice. "I thought you were going to interview the ghost," I finally managed to say, and my voice sounded as if it was far away. "I decided to let Papa do that, if it is a real ghost," Tom said. "Oh, go get him, and Uncle Mark." Oh, itchy, itchy. Oh, itchy, itchy, itchy. Oh, excuse me. My ear was itching. I didn't stop praying until I flung open the front door of our house and entered the parlor where Papa and Mama and Aunt Bertha were sitting. They all stood up at the same time and stared at me as if I'd popped right up out of the floor. "What are you doing out of bed?" Mama demanded. Well, Papa looked at the dirt and the cockleburrs sticking from my Levi breeches and shirt. "And where in the name of Jupiter have you been?" he asked. I tried to talk, but I couldn't, because my breath was like fire coming out of my lungs. Papa grinned to pound me on the back and tried to help me catch my breath. Mama ran to the kitchen and came back with a glass of water. With Papa pounding my back and Mama getting some water down my throat, at least I could talk. Or at last I could talk. "TD has captured the ghost of Silverlode," I cried. "He has the ghost tied to a tombstone in Boot Hill, and he wants you to come interview it. And bring Uncle Mark." Papa looked at me as if I was a ghost. He stood there stunned. Then he held out his hands in a pleading gesture toward Mama. "Oh, why did we have to give birth to a son who hasn't given us a moment's peace since the day he was born?" Mama ignored the question and acted quickly, as she always did in a crisis. She went to the telephone and called the Allies Saloon. Uncle Mark wasn't there, so she called the other saloon and got him on the phone. She told him to come at once and to bring a couple of horses. Papa and I were waiting at our front gate when Uncle Mark rode up, riding a strange horse and leading another one. "Tina said it was urgent," he said. "I borrowed these horses from a couple of cowboys. What's this all about?" "You'll never believe it," Papa said as he mounted the extra horse. Uncle Mark held out his hand and lifted me up behind him. "TD has got the ghost of Silverlode tied to a tombstone in Boot Hill," I shouted at Uncle Mark. Oh, I said that in the wrong voice. "Let's hurry before the ghost gets loose." Uncle Mark didn't waste any more words. We galloped off towards Silverlode. Tom was waiting at the corner of Whiskey Row and Corey Street for us. "Did the ghost get away?" I asked as I slipped off the rump of the horse. "No," Tom said. "I walked up the trail just a minute or so ago and he's still tied to the tombstone." Papa and Uncle Mark dismounted, with Papa glaring at Tom. "I'll deal with you later," Papa said. "My great brain did it," Tom said proudly. "If it's a real ghost, you can interview it, and that'll make you a famous journalist." Then Tom shook his head. "My great brain keeps telling me there's no such thing as a ghost, and that's why I sent for you and Uncle Mark, so that you could lock up in jail whatever it is that's been scaring kids and grown-ups with this ghost business." Then we walked to the end of Corey Street and started up the trail to Boot Hill. "I wonder who the poor fool is," Uncle Mark said, and surprised me by laughing. "It would serve him right if we left him there till morning." "It is the ghost of Mr. Tinker," I said. "He came up from the grave just like he did last night." "Last night?" Papa said. "It gets worse and worse." We came to the end of the trail, where we could plainly see the ghost tied to the tombstone. "I assure you, John," Uncle Mark said, "that it isn't the ghost of Mr. Tinker." The ghost must have heard us. "Whoever you are, get me out of this," he shouted. Uncle Mark began to laugh softly as he walked to the tombstone. He was still laughing as he untied the lariat. "Well, let's see what we've got here," Uncle Mark said, as he lifted the sheet off the ghost. "As I live and breathe, if it isn't Steve Smith, the old ghost storyteller himself, caught in his own trap." Sure enough, there was Seth's uncle looking as if he'd wished he really was a ghost and could disappear. "I was only trying to help," he said. Then he got angry. You were one of those who encouraged this Ghost of Silverlode business." "Guilty," Uncle Mark said, "but I only did it to make sure the kids in town don't dare to come here and end up like the Knudsen and Bartle boy. I didn't come here to run around the cemetery with a sheet on." "I had to do it," Steve Smith said. "Yesterday, my nephew told me that he and some other boys were coming here after curfew last night. I figured I'd given them such a scare that they would never come back again. Well, I did give those kids such a scare by pretending to be a ghost, but I didn't think any of them would ever dare set foot in this ghost town again." "Well, that's understandable," Uncle Mark said with sympathy. "But when my nephew told me after supper tonight that one boy still wasn't convinced that there was a ghost, and they were coming here again tonight," Steve Smith said, "I thought if I pretended to be the ghost of Silverlode one more time, it would convince even this boy that there was a ghost." Then he looked at Papa, as if he wanted to take a punch at my father. "But that son of yours wasn't satisfied to see and hear a ghost 2 nights in a row. He had to capture a ghost." "I'm sorry, Mr. Smith," Tom said, "but my great brain won't rest until I find out if there really was ghosts or not. If it was real, I wanted to interview it and find out all about ghosts, so my father could print the story in the Advocate and it would make him famous. And, well, if the ghost was fake, I wanted to prove it to the other kids that there were no such things as ghosts." "I'm glad I don't live in Aidenville," Mr. Smith said. "When this story gets out, I doubt if I'll even be able to come here to visit my brother and his family again." "Oh, nobody except us will know," Uncle Mark said. "If the story got out, every kid in Aidenville would start making this ghost town into a playground. And that could lead to another tragedy." Then Uncle Mark put his hand on Tom's shoulder. "You and John are going to tell a hair-raising tale of what happened here tonight. You are going to say that when you tried to lasso the ghost, the lariat went right through him. You're going to say that the ghost caught you both and threatened to take you back to his grave with him if you ever set foot in Silverlode again." "But that would be lying, Uncle Mark," Tom said. "And besides, I'd have to admit my great brain was wrong, and there really are ghosts." Papa had been standing with his cheeks so blown up I thought he'd take off like a balloon. "You and J.D. will do exactly as your Uncle Mark says," Papa said. "This ghost town must be strictly off limits to every boy in Aidenville. Give me your word as a Fitzgerald that you both will do as your uncle suggested." Tom sure looked disappointed. "All right, Papa," he said. "Word of honor." "Me too," I said. Uncle Mark looked at Seth's uncle. "I suppose you came on a horse?" he said. "I hid it in back of the old Miners' Hotel," Steve Smith said. "Thanks, Marshall, for keeping this story a secret." I rode behind Papa and Tom behind Uncle Mark until we stopped in front of our house. We slid off over the rumps of the horses. Papa dismounted and handed the reins of the horse to Uncle Mark. Then my uncle looked out at Tom. "I will sort of hate seeing you leave for Salt Lake City in a couple weeks," he said. Then he rode down Main Street laughing as if he had told himself a funny joke. "Aw, Tom's going to be going to the academy soon, and by the next book, I think." couple of weeks, I'm sure. Mama and Aunt Bertha began hugging Tom and making a fuss over him when we entered the parlor. I was as much I don't know what I'm going to do with you, he said. The boys are safe, Mama said, and let us thank their guardian angels for that. We have one son who's absolutely deaf in his left ear, Papa said as he pointed to Tom, talking about, this is your left, right? And the left side was an angel, and the right side was a little devil. It's old lore, old folklore that we used to believe. So you'd have the voice. I win! Oh, that's what they believe. Now he just said that his son was absolutely deaf in his left ear, which means he never heard I've got better advice than that. Or let's look at this again. Never listened to it, as he pointed to Tom. What makes you say a silly thing like that, Mama asked. He said, every boy is born with a guardian angel on his left shoulder, Papa said, and that guardian angel whispers into the boy's ear every time that boy Papa sure can exaggerate at times. I can't help it, Tom said. I was born with a great brain that has to know everything. I just had to find out if there was such thing as a real ghost. Then why in the name of Jupiter didn't you just ask me? Papa demanded. I did ask you a long time ago, Tom said, and you led me to believe and their bodies had never been found, like the Knudsen and Bartell boys. You would be the first to blame me for not telling them that there was a ghost of Silverlode to scare them away from the place. Oh my gosh, really? Come on. Okay, it's going to be a long read, but not too much longer. Tom's great brain must have been working like 60 to try to get us out of being punished. If you told me the truth, he said, as if everything was Papa's fault, I'd have kept the secret from the other kids. It's very late, Mama said, putting an end to the argument. You boys go to bed. We'll discuss it further in the morning. Papa stared at Tom as if saying a prayer. And please stay in bed until morning, he pleaded. The next morning, Papa kept us in suspense until we had finished eating breakfast, and he was having a second cup of coffee. Mother and I have talked things over, he said. Then he looked straight at Tom. You and SD will be leaving for the academy at Salt Lake City in 2 weeks. We all just want to be as close as a family as we can be during that time. There will be no punishment. Then Papa looked at Tom with an appealing look in his eyes, like a hungry dog begging for a bone. Do you think it possible, TD, for you and your great brain to give your mother and me and the rest of this town a breathing spell for just 2 weeks? I think so, Tom said. Papa lost his temper and slammed his fist down so hard on the table it shook the dishes on it. I want you to do more than just think about it, he said. All right, Papa. It's a promise, Tom said. Tom kept his word to Uncle Mark and Papa. He told such a hair-raising tale about the ghost of Silverlode that you couldn't have gotten any kid in town to pass the sign on the road to Silverlode for all the gumdrops they had at STMI store. He also kept his word to Papa by giving his great brain a rest and doing everything he could to please Papa, Mama, and Aunt Bertha. And I guess because his great brain was resting and not working on anything, not working in its usual style, he got very generous with me. He told me the day before he was to leave for Salt Lake City with Sven that he would let me use his bike for just 10 cents a week. You can afford it, J.D., he said as we sat on our back porch making the deal. I've talked to Papa. He admits it's only fair to raise your allowance to 20 cents a week because you'll be doing all the chores. Well, it was the best deal I'd ever made with Tom, and it gave me an idea. I wasn't the smartest fellow around, but I'd been swindled so many times by the great brain that I knew all the angles. That was one advantage of being a victim of a swindle. It taught a fella how to make other kids the victims. I knew plenty of kids in town who didn't own a bike who would gladly pay me 5 cents a day to use Tom's bicycle. And why would a smart kid like me, who knew all the angles now, do my own chores? The Jensen family were very poor. I could get Frank and Alan to do all my chores for 10 cents a week, which would leave me with a neat profit of $0.10 a week. It would be me and not Tom sitting on the corral fence watching somebody else do the chores. And look at all the things I learned from Tom about trading and swapping things. Enough of my brother's great brain had rubbed off on me that there wasn't anything a kid in town had that I couldn't get, and the thought didn't bother my conscience one bit. Somebody had to take my brother's place in Aidenville, and it might as well be me. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that I'd soon be the richest kid in town. The end. Ooh, it's been a happy book. It's been a happy book. And now the next one isn't as happy, but it's a learning book. Okay, bye-bye.